And oftentimes they know. I go, what was the pattern in your family that drove you crazy? This. Well, that's what you just got. Okay, and they're going to get mad. I'll just warn you. I mean, you have a conversation like that, they're going to be like, no, you know, he's perfect in every way. And I'm like, you know, it's just like that place of like, this is where I fall back on numerology and go, okay, he's like this and you're like this and the numbers are, you know, so I try and hit it from a couple of angles to make people be aware. I mean, I had a very strong metaphysical person in town that I knew, and she was super sweet, really wonderful, fabulous person. Fell in love with this guy, and the numbers were opposite. And then they pulled this card, and so I tried to counsel both of them. I was like, you guys are in two different worlds. And she was like, no, he's just, we agree on everything. We're perfect on everything. And I'm like, just remember I said so. You know, just, you know, for what it's worth. And go knock yourself out and have a good time. Just remember, I said so. And so they've been together 7 years, and of course, what's happening? Like all of a sudden, she's not getting what she wants, he's not getting what he wants, and guess what? This is a pattern from their childhood. And so that's the thing, you know, that you work through this. This is a level development. So there are psychological stages and levels of human brain development, and all of us go through them. And the major arcana are that psychological stages. They show you the stages. So this is a stage. It's a lovely stage. I'd love to hang out here all day too, but you can't live here because that's called fantasy bond. So if you live here, and you see women that are like this. I had one woman, very sweet woman, amazing, and she kept pulling this card, but it was next to some really horrible cards, and it said her husband was a drug addict, and he was lying to her, and he was like doing all this stuff, and she goes, oh, no, he's a dry drunk, he's a dry drunk, he's a dry drunk, you know, and I'm like, no, he's not a dry drunk, you know, but it's like, sure enough, you know, she found out that he was a terrible cocaine addict, and he had used up like half of their retirement savings on cocaine. And, you know, so I was just like, oh, you know, like she was in a fantasy land, and then she was like, I'm going to save him. And even the drug rehabilitation people told her he's lying on everything. Like they literally pulled her aside. He went to this very fancy one in California or something, and they said, he lies about everything. You need to know he lies about everything. You can't trust anything that comes out of his mouth. I've never even heard of a group actually saying that directly to a woman. So you can imagine how strongly they felt that you know, he was lying straight across the board. But she wanted to be in this, and she hung out for another 3 years and then finally had to divorce him because this busted. It busted out, okay? And so you do have to bust out of this at a certain point, but it's hard. You know, I mean, we want to believe that, you know, it's like my joke is that picture of what we were supposed to have when we were kids, every woman that's married knows you've never gotten that, right? That's a total illusion. It's never worked out the way the picture and the stories told us. But in a weird way, there's like a deeper level of love that actually starts to surface that's based on more respect and actually really seeing the person you're with and knowing who they are and knowing what their limitations are and helping them grow through those limitations. That's not like Prince Charming. You know, so it's just different, okay? All right, so when you fall in love, the natural next sequence in life that our neurological patterning grows through is that you want to make commitments. So, you know, this is like an adolescent thing again. It's like, will you wear my leather jacket, right? Remember high school? Will you wear my leather jacket, you know, my varsity jacket? And so you put on the varsity jacket and you're all so happy and everything. So you start making these little commitments. Friendship rings, promissory rings, all that. Remember all of that, right? You know? So the next stage in development is commitment. And so when you fall in love, you start to realize that you want to commit to somebody. You want to love them. You want to give them something. You know, you want to make it firmer. You want to make it more real. You want to ground it, sort of. You know, it's important to you, right? So this card is the commitment card. And so commitment is a very good thing. You need to learn to make commitments. You need to follow through with commitments. You need to learn to be responsible. And this is that first stage of like, I've got to grow up. I've got to start being responsible. You know, I want to take her to the prom. I got to get some money. You know, like, you know, all that kind of thing, you know, as you kind of go through. Like, you have to start figuring it out. And the figuring it out part is the learning of commitments. So when you look at this card, what you notice is the red and the blue. Okay, so we're dealing with first chakra, which is grounding, responsibility, money, all of this, and communication. So it's like, I want to communicate to you that I have good grounding. And the way I communicate that I have good grounding is that I am making a promise to you. I am making a commitment to you. I am following through with you. Okay? Now, I like to think of this card as Ben-Hur. Okay, so notice the chariot. We've got a chariot. And Ben-Hur as a character was incredibly committed, right? And, you know, was very movement oriented. And so what's interesting here is that here he is. This is like a knight that is holding a grail. So that big round thing in the center is actually considered the Holy Grail. And notice the Holy Grail is a vessel that's holding something that's swirling, and deep in the center is something red. Okay, so some passion, you have some passion. And movement is the red wheels, the red chariot wheels, and you're going to see these showing up in some of the other cards. And so it's like, okay, I need to make a step. I need to do a forward movement. I need to create some sort of a change. But notice that commitment, his helmet is on. Okay, so can you see him? You can't see him.
No.
So when you make a commitment, are you showing your authentic self? Or are you showing the self that you think the other person wants to see?
One that the person wants to see.
Right.
What you want
them to
Them
see.
to see.
Right. See, that's what makes it really interesting. So I want to be the knight in shining armor, right? Knight in shining armor, right? It's all shiny and everything. I want to look right. I've got strength. I've got armor. I've got a chariot. You want to come? You know, like this, okay? So that, yeah, you're like, absolutely, what girl wouldn't want to follow that, right? But again, you know, commitment is a spiritual journey just like the Holy Grail. So when you make a commitment, did you ever notice that when you make a commitment, you don't know what you're in for? You really don't know what you're in for. You think you know what you're in for. It's like, oh, I'm making a promise to you, I love you. And you actually have no clue what that's about to entail, right? So it's blind. So you can see, but only a little bit. You don't really have full sight. You only have a little bit of sight, okay? And then he's got a crab on the top of his head because the sign that rules commitment is Cancer. So Cancer is the sign of home and hearth and family and babies and commitment and like the ultimate classic stay-at-home, super good dad character of the universe is a Cancer male, okay? And so loyal, faithful, steadfast, true, committed, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, classically, astrologically, Cancer males are like the top group, okay? And Cancer women are pretty good too. But notice that he's got this canopy over the top of the chariot, right? And so I like to think of this as, you know, in the Jewish weddings, how they get married under the canopy, remember? So what does that represent? Anybody remember any Jewish religion? So it represents that, you know, it's sanctified again and it's contained. And so you've created a sacred house. You've created a sacred spiritual house. Like your commitments create a spiritual home for you to reside within. Okay? And then you've got these gargoyle-y kind of creatures down below. And notice at the very, very bottom, what kind of road is it?
A brick road, yellow brick
It's a yellow brick road! Which is really good. So notice a commitment is a yellow brick road. So like, you know, she's like, follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Well, you know, it's like, are we getting anywhere? Maybe we're getting somewhere. So, you know, sometimes commitments make you circle around and around. And when you step on the yellow brick road, you really don't know what you're in for. Right?
Right.
So this is the yellow brick road. Like commitment is a yellow brick road and looks beautiful. It's going to lead us, our commitments are going to lead us to the land of Oz. And they are, absolutely. You just don't know what that journey entails when you start out. Okay? So then you've got these cherubs at the bottom, but isn't that funny? They don't look like they're moving. Okay? So notice that the back of the wheel behind the chariot, it looks like a spiraling vortex, but in the front, the cherubs are just sitting there.
Where are the cherubs?
I don't
Right in
see
the front.
cherubs.
These little,
Oh,
these
those.
little gargoyle-y.
Oh, those
those are
gargoyles?
These little,
cherubs,
yeah,
huh?
like these
Okay.
little
You call them
gargoyle-y
cherubs?
things. Okay. Sorry, I guess I should say gargoyle-y things. So anyway, but they're all sitting there, just sitting there. Because your commitments also trap you. Okay? So when you make a commitment, sometimes people don't realize this when they fall in love, but when they fall in love, they're saying, well, I totally commit to you, and I'll let you be your stuck little self, and you'll let me be my stuck little self, and we'll be stuck together, and we'll be totally safe, and I won't make you grow or do anything, because we're safe with each other, right? And so sometimes when you get married, you get stuck. Sometimes when you make commitments, you get stuck. And that's part of the process, is that, am I committing to you, or am I committing to myself? What am I committing to exactly, okay? So in my marriage vows, I said, because of this card, I said, I choose to support you in being the very best person that you want to be, not necessarily the very best person that I want you to be. Okay, so notice I opened the commitment framework. So again, it's not about what I need, which is oftentimes this card at the beginning, but it's actually about how can my soul essence commit to you and serve your highest being, regardless of whether it serves my highest being. That's the highest form of commitment, okay? So you take the me out of the equation and you go into what opens love. Okay, so, and that saved me quite a few times in my marriage with John, because there were times that he really needed to do something like go work in the Grand Canyon for 6 months, and I really didn't want him to do that, you know, but I had made that commitment. I had created a commitment that was open-ended, and he said to me later, he said, you know what, if you hadn't let me do that, he said, I think I might have divorced you. See, because it was what his soul needed to do. I didn't want him to do it, you know, it brought up fears and concerns and all sorts of shit for me, but it's what served him in that moment. So that's what you want to look at. It's like, what type of commitments are you making? Commitments are wonderful, but commitments are yellow brick roads. Is it creating a vortex that's opening behind you that you can't see? Or is it getting you stuck because you're getting trapped in your old place of safety, and you've made an agreement to make sure neither of you have to grow completely? Okay? So it's a question. You can do it either way. You just want to figure out which way you're going. Okay, so this card also represents marriage vows and stuff like that, so engagements, stuff like that. So if somebody gets this card, they could be being engaged. Okay, so if somebody got this card, what would you tell them?
You have a commitment coming? You're getting ready to make a commitment?
Yeah, get ready to make a commitment, or you need to make a commitment, because sometimes you get, you know, like I get men, you know. This card is upside down.
Problems?
Having a problem with commitment, are we? You know, so it's always so funny. This one's upside down. I'm like, having a problem with commitment, aren't we? And they're like, how did you know that? I'm like, you know, so you know, it's again, you know, commitments of some level. You need to make commitments on some level, and those are yellow brick roads, and those will open up.